My husband laughed in open court. His attorney laughed. His mother, sitting in the front row in her cream blazer, pearl earrings perfectly placed, pressed her lips together in that tight, satisfied smile she had been perfecting for the 3 years I was married to her son. The judge had not yet entered. The bailiff was arranging papers, and my husband leaned across the aisle, close enough that I could smell his cologne, and said, quietly, so only I could hear, "You don't even have a folder, Meredith." He was right. I didn't have a folder, Meredith. He was right. I didn't have a folder. I had a laptop, a thumb drive, and 7 years of work that his name was on. I should tell you how we got here, because it matters. It matters in ways that my husband, I will call him my husband until the court says otherwise, because that word still has teeth, never bothered to understand. My name is Meredith Calloway. I am 31 years old. I have a master's degree in forensic accounting from Georgetown, which I completed at night while working full-time, which I paid for myself, which my husband once described at a dinner party as that little certificate she got. I did not correct him in front of his colleagues. I smiled and refilled his glass and told myself it didn't matter. It mattered. I met my husband, Conrad, at a firm holiday party. He was charming in the specific way that men in finance are charming, confident without being loud, attentive in a way that felt like being chosen. He worked in private equity. He had opinions about wine. He introduced me to his mother within 3 weeks, which I thought was a sign of seriousness. I understand now that it was a different kind of test. His mother, Patricia, I will not give her a different name because she earned the one she has, looked me up and down at that first Sunday dinner and said, "Conrad tells me you work in accounting. How practical." She said it the way you say how unfortunate. I smiled. I passed the bread. I told myself it didn't matter. We married 2 years later in a ceremony his mother planned. My dress was not the one I chose. My flowers were not the ones I chose. The venue was not the one I chose. Conrad told me his mother had strong feelings and that it was easier to let her have them. I walked down the aisle in ivory instead of white and told myself that a wedding is one day. A marriage is a life. I was right about the first part. The company started as my idea. I want to be precise about this, because precision is the thing that saved me and imprecision is the thing that almost destroyed everything. The company, Callaway Meridian Consulting, which Conrad later renamed Meridian Capital Group, which you may have heard of, began as a business plan I wrote on a Saturday afternoon while Conrad was at a golf tournament. It was a financial consulting firm specializing in forensic audit services for mid-size companies. I knew the space. I'd spent 5 years inside it. I knew exactly where the gaps were, and I knew how to build something that fit them. I showed Conrad that Sunday night. He read it for 20 minutes, set it down and said, "This is actually good." That was the beginning. What followed was 2 years of building. I designed the service structure. I wrote the client acquisition strategy. I built the internal compliance framework. Every internal policy, every audit protocol, every document template that the company ran on. Conrad raised the initial capital from his network, handled client relationships, and served as the public face of the firm. We agreed on this division. It made sense. He had the connections. I had the infrastructure. What I did not have, what I did not think to demand, because I trusted my husband, because I was 30 years old and in love and did not yet understand what documents are for, was my name on the founding paperwork. Conrad told me it was a tax efficiency issue. His attorney, a man named Gerald who wore the same 3 suits in rotation and smelled faintly of cigar smoke, explained that ownership structure would be formalized later. I asked twice. I was reassured twice, and then I got busy building the thing, and the formalization never came. 3 years into our marriage, Meridian Capital Group had 14 employees, 31 active clients, and a valuation that had crossed 8 figures. It was the kind of success that changes the way people look at you at parties. Conrad accepted a regional business award and thanked his team. He thanked his mother. He did not thank me, but his mother caught my eye across the room and smiled, and I told myself it didn't matter. I know. I found out about the transfer on a Tuesday. I had been working from home. Conrad had been in San Francisco for a conference, or so I believed. I was reviewing quarterly files and ran across a document I did not recognize in a shared folder I was not meant to open. I opened it. It was a share transfer agreement, dated 6 weeks prior, transferring Conrad's 60% ownership stake in Meridian Capital Group to a holding company called Vela Partners LLC. I did not know what Vela Partners LLC. I did know the name of its registered agent, because it appeared on the signature line, Simone Archer. I had never met Simone Archer. But when I searched her name alongside Conrad's, her LinkedIn profile came up within seconds. Director of Business Development at a firm Conrad's company had recently partnered with. Her profile photo showed a woman approximately my age, professional, attractive. There were no photos of her with Conrad anywhere public. There didn't need to be. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, then I opened my laptop and started working. I am a forensic accountant. I investigate financial irregularities for a living. I know how to find things that people believe are hidden, and I know how to document what I find in ways that are admissible. For the next 6 weeks, while Conrad came home and kissed my cheek and asked what I wanted for dinner, I audited my own marriage. What I found was methodical and deliberate. Vela Partners had been incorporated 8 months earlier. Over the following months, Conrad had moved assets, slowly, in amounts below reporting thresholds, out of jointly held accounts and into business accounts I was not a signatory on. The share transfer to Simone Archer's holding company was the final piece. By the time he would have asked me for a divorce, there would have been nothing left to split. I would have been a non-owning spouse of a company I built with no assets, no documented contribution, and a husband whose attorney would have explained patiently that I had never been a legal partner in anything. I documented everything. I organized it into a case file that ran to 240 pages. I made 3 copies. I put one in a safe deposit box. I emailed one to an encrypted cloud account. I gave one to an attorney named Diane Okafor, who specialized in financial fraud and marital asset cases, and who, when she finished reading, looked up at me over her glasses and said, "Where did you learn to build a case like this?" I told her I learned at the same place I learned everything, on my own at night, while someone else got credit. Conrad filed for divorce on a Thursday morning. He served me at home, which meant he had someone ring our doorbell while he was already at his mother's house. The petition cited irreconcilable differences. It requested that marital assets, listed as our joint checking account, containing $4,000, and a 2019 SUV, be divided equally. It made no mention of Meridian Capital Group, because according to the filing, I had no ownership interest in Meridian Capital Group. His attorney Gerald included a cover letter. It noted that given the straightforward nature of the asset division, I should consider accepting the terms without counsel to avoid unnecessary expense. Unnecessary expense. The phrase sat in my chest like something cold. I called Diane. The pretrial conference was where Conrad first saw me across a courtroom, and I watched his face go through something interesting. He had expected, I think, to feel sorry for me. He had built a story in which I was the naive wife who hadn't paid close enough attention, who would sit across from Gerald's 3-suit rotation and nod and sign whatever was put in front of me because the alternative cost money I supposedly didn't have. What he saw instead was Diane, in a dark suit, arranging files at a table. His eyes moved from Diane to me. I kept my face still. "Where did she get an attorney?" I heard him say to Gerald, quietly. Gerald murmured something reassuring. His mother, in the row behind them, adjusted her pearls. The pretrial conference was brief. Diane filed our counterpetition, which listed Meridian Capital Group as a marital asset subject to equitable distribution, on the basis of my undocumented but demonstrable founding contribution. Gerald objected. The judge, the Honorable Patricia Chen, which I mention only because Conrad's mother's name is also Patricia, and I found a small private comfort in this, scheduled a full evidentiary hearing. As we walked out, Conrad fell into step beside me for a moment. "Just a moment. This is embarrassing," he said. "You're going to lose and embarrass yourself, and we could have handled this like adults." I looked at him. "I am handling it like an adult," I said. "That's what you're worried about." I kept walking. The night before the hearing, I did not sleep well. I want to be honest about that, because these stories sometimes make the person telling them sound like stone, and I was not stone. I sat in the kitchen of the apartment I had rented, small, second floor, a kitchen window that looked out at a fire escape. And I thought about the Sunday dinners and the wrong flowers and the golf tournament, and Gerald's cover letter, and the phrase unnecessary expense, and I was frightened, not of losing. I had done the work and I believed in the work. I was frightened of what it meant that the person who had slept beside me for 3 years had done this slowly, deliberately over months, while asking me what I wanted for dinner. But by 6 in the morning I had made coffee and reviewed my exhibits for the last time, and by 7:30 I was in a suit that I had chosen myself, and by 9 I was at the courthouse. Gerald opened with confidence. He argued that my role at Meridian had been supportive and administrative, not a founding contribution but a spousal contribution, which had been compensated through the lifestyle our marriage provided. He used the phrase "the lifestyle our marriage provided" twice. The second time, I watched Judge Chen's expression move in a direction that Gerald did not notice. Then Diane introduced Exhibit A. Exhibit A was the original business plan, dated, time-stamped, and authored, according to the document metadata, by Meredith Calloway, on a Saturday afternoon 4.5 years ago. The document had never been altered. The metadata was clean. Gerald objected. The objection was overruled. Exhibit B was the internal compliance framework, 212 pages of protocols, audit procedures, and policy documents, all authored by me, all predating the company's incorporation. Exhibit C was the client acquisition model. Exhibit D was a series of emails in which Conrad forwarded my work to Gerald with the note, "Use this for the founding docs," dated 3 weeks before the company was formally registered. That last one was the one that changed the temperature in the room. Gerald asked for a recess. It was granted. During the recess, I sat at the table and drank water and did not look at Conrad, who was standing near the door with his mother, speaking in a low voice. His mother looked at me once. Her expression was different from the one she wore at Sunday dinners. When the hearing resumed, Diane called our expert witness, a digital forensics analyst named Dr. Taub Warren Phils, who had examined the documents and confirmed the metadata, confirmed the timeline, and confirmed that the founding materials of Meridian Capital Group had been created by a single author prior to the company's incorporation. That author's name was in the document properties. It was not Conrad's name. There is a moment in a courtroom, I understand this now in a way I did not before, where something tips. It is not dramatic in the way films show it. Nobody gasps. The judge does not slam a gavel. What happens is quieter than that. A lawyer stops making objections. A man stops holding his chin up at the angle that communicates certainty. A mother in the front row becomes very still. Gerald had stopped objecting. Conrad was looking at his hands. Judge Chen asked Gerald in a measured tone to explain the basis for the claim that my contribution was administrative. Gerald explained. Judge Chen asked him to clarify. Gerald clarified. Judge Chen looked at him for a moment after he finished, the way a person looks when they are deciding whether a response merits a follow-up. And then she said, "I see," and made a note, and the room was quiet. Diane stood and said, "Your Honor, we would also like to introduce Exhibit G." Exhibit G was the Vela Partners Incorporation documents, the share transfer agreement, and 12 months of bank transfer records showing the movement of marital assets into non-joint accounts. Diane was very precise and very calm as she walked the court through each transaction. Date, amount, destination. Date, amount, destination. It went on for several minutes. When she finished, she said, "This pattern of transfers, Your Honor, meets the statutory definition of dissipation of marital assets under state law. We are requesting that the court consider this in its distribution analysis and refer the matter to the appropriate regulatory body for review." She sat down. Gerald looked at his notepad for a long moment. Then he looked at Conrad. Conrad did not look back. I will not tell you that I felt triumphant, because triumph is not exactly what I felt. What I felt was tired and accurate. I had built something true and I had put it in front of people whose job was to look at true things and act on them, and they had done their job. That is not drama. That is just work completing itself. What I will tell you is this: as the hearing concluded and Judge Chen indicated she would be issuing her written findings within the standard timeframe, I gathered my documents and put them in my bag, and I stood, and I did not look at Conrad. I walked down the center of the room toward the door. The bailiff held it open. Behind me, I heard his mother say his name. Just his name, in a voice I had never heard from her before. Quiet. Not the Sunday dinner voice. Not the pearl earring voice. A voice like something that has just understood it made a mistake. I kept walking. The judge's written findings came 18 days later. The court determined that my contribution to the founding and operational infrastructure of Meridian Capital Group constituted a substantial marital asset. Equitable distribution was ordered accordingly. The court further referred the Vela Partners' transfers to the State Attorney General's office for review of potential fraudulent conveyance. Gerald withdrew from the case 2 weeks after that. Conrad retained new counsel. The Attorney General's office opened a formal inquiry. I was interviewed as a cooperating witness. I brought my documentation. I was precise. I am not going to tell you what happened to Conrad after that, because this is not a story about Conrad. It stopped being a story about Conrad the moment I sat down at the kitchen table on a Tuesday afternoon and opened a folder I wasn't supposed to find, and decided that what I did next was going to be about me. I will tell you what happened to me. I consulted with 2 partners at a financial advisory firm who had read about the case and reached out through Diane's office. Those conversations became a formal offer. I have my own team now. My own clients. My name on the founding documents. I checked 3 times. I rent the second-floor apartment with the fire escape window for now, and in the mornings when I make coffee and look out at it, I find I do not feel small. I find I feel like someone who did the work and kept the records and waited for the room to go quiet. Rooms always go quiet. You just have to be standing in the right one.